A long, high-pitched tone from the electrocardiogram punctuated the chaos in the operating theatre, adding to the stress Lyric was under. On a stainless steel table under bright lights was the body of a soldier. Lyric was feeling panic set in as he looked at the soldier. He was a member of the canid-type species called a Byrigan. He had multiple plasma burns across his body, a missing arm and several lacerations in his kidneys and intestines. The soldier, either 19 or 20 years of age, was one of many casualties in the war the Confederacy was engaged in with the Gulsak Pact. "Bring the crash cart," a calm feminine voice called out over the din, snapping Lyric out of her panic spiral. Lyric pulled the cart with an array of chemical stimulants, respiratory tools and a defibrillator. Another nurse was already shaving away even more of the Brigian's fur to attach electric leads should other efforts fail. The poor soldier's body, already hooked up to blood packs and monitors, continued to sprout new artificial connections. "Adrenaline," the doctor commanded with calm authority. Hyrek handed the syringe to the surgeon, a human with pitch-dark skin who inserted it into the Byrigian. "Set the metronome and attach a BMV," the doctor stated again. Hyrek did as instructed and, after setting the metronome, attached the bag valve mask over the patient's snout. Hyrek began squeezing the red bag attached to the mask in rhythm with the metronome. The surgeon's powerful human hands, forged from musculature designed to resist the tremendous gravity of their homeworld, began to pump the heart. Hyrek winced when the human strength cracked the patient's ribcage. It was, in these difficult conditions, a necessity to manually pump the heart. The war overwhelmed the Confederacy's medical capacity, requiring the need to resort to more primitive methods where modern machinery was in short supply. The surgeon's collected demeanour, while keeping with the rhythm of the metronome, helped Hyrek focus on her work. Manual heart massaging was only something she read about in medical school. The fact the human surgeon was so adept at it was shocking to Hyrek. The effort persisted for what felt like an eternity. The long, stressful tone continued to peal in the air. The effort wasn't working. "We're going to try the AED," one surgeon called out after stopping her efforts. Hyrek returned to the cart and set the dial, while another nurse attached electrical leads to the soldier's chest. She knew resorting to the electric shock was a last-ditch effort in a dire situation. "Clear!" the surgeon called out, and activated the AED. The body jolted, and the high-pitched tone briefly paused. Hyrek's hopes it worked were dashed when the tone returned. The surgeon continued to shock the patient. Each shock paused the screeching tone only a moment, just for it to return once more, mocking their efforts to save the soldier. The tone finally ceased when the surgeon reached over and flicked the EKG switch to off. The surgeon picked up a nearby recording device and spoke into it. "Patient time of death, 1932 GST. Apparent cause of death, severe blood loss and ruptured kidney. Additional autopsy recommended for full extent of injuries." Hyrek stood in stunned silence as she looked at the soldier on the table. Bright lights, clean surfaces, and the sterile scent of hospital disinfectants mixed with the red and iron tang of blood. While Hyrek attempted to collect her thoughts, the other nurse huddled in a fetal position against the wall. Death was not something modern medical practitioners ever got used to. If a patient made it to a hospital, medical technology ensured a near guarantee of survival. The only ones who felt to live were those who didn't survive the accident and therefore had no need to arrive in a surgery. The war changed things. Evac ships arrived hourly with severe wounds the medical ships were unable to contend with. A critical shortage of equipment cascaded to failures and death in the operating rooms. Medical professionals weren't used to the psychological effects of losing a patient on the table. Except for the humans. The species had developed a reputation for being monstrous. Strong, durable, terrifying in battle, and they had a penchant to create bizarre technologies. On top of that, they never seemed to flinch in danger. The lead surgeon, a woman named Janelle Richards, was unflappably calm during the stressful affair. Even now, Janelle was kneeling next to the shaken nurse on the floor and whispering calming words. She then helped the poor man up and escorted him to the men's locker room to clean up after surgery. Irek entered her own locker room and began disrobing. The stained garments went into a cart for disposal while she took her body into the showers. She ran a clawed hand through her thick fur. Even though the scrubs protected her body from stains, she still felt like the soldier's blood had collected on her body. Irek lost track of time as she stared blankly into the stream of water since, when she got out, Janelle was already dressing in her street clothes. The woman's thick black curled hair atop her head, previously hidden under a surgical cap, puffed out in every direction. She wore a black jacket over a red shirt and had a pair of blue cloth leggings the humans called jeans. There was no indication what had occurred in the operating theatre bothered her. Images of the soldier lying on the table kept intruding on Irek's mind. His eyes, staring up at her, pleaded for help. She imagined his mouth moving, blaming her for her failure. The long tone of the EKG screamed at her. "You failed. You failed. You failed." A gentle touch pulled Irek out of her spiral. She looked up and saw Janelle, who spoke. "We saved 7 today. The last one wasn't your fault." "What would you know?" Irek shrugged away from Janelle's hand. "You're a death warder. You don't understand these things." Instead of the expected response, Janelle instead stood and went to her locker. The gentle sound of rustling paper could be heard, and she returned. Irek looked up and saw the doctor with an extended flyer. "Here," Janelle said. "Come with me. I think it will help." Irek gently took the flyer and looked it over. The Confederacy supplied entertainment to the rear support during the war. Supposedly it was meant to keep up morale. The entertainment the prior week was an odd Earth group doing something called pro wrestling. While Irek appreciated the incredible acrobatics, the odd melodrama act that went along with it confused her. This week, the entertainment was in the cantina. There were 3 musical acts headlined by Irek's favourite idol group, the Stardust Boys. She did find the idea intriguing and thought getting to see her crush, Miss, live on stage in an intimate setting would be fun. Maybe the upbeat music would also help her mood. Irek shoved the flyer in her pocket and replied, "All right, I'll go." The pair left the lockers and passed by the break room where a television was playing. "The human worlds have agreed to send direct military support, adding to the growing coalition of Confederate planets assisting the combined Confederate support. The forces are from the human sub-jurisdictions of Russia, China, Greater Europe, Canada, Australia, India, Japan, South Korea, New Zealand, Mexico, and coordinated by the United States. The first direct engagement is expected within the next week." A smile passed Janelle's lips. "Looks like our job will be over soon." Irek knew the humans were unusually strong, but she wasn't sure what their small population would do in a major galactic-scale war. She was at least happy Janelle was optimistic. The duo left their surgery and walked across the temporary field hospital complex. Set on a low-gravity planet to accommodate the least sturdy Confederacy species, the field hospital was immense. Shuttles were constantly coming and going from orbit, with the blink of hyperspace drives twinkle like stars. Visible on the horizon was a tremendous planetary defense tower, which provided a hyperdrive inhibition field and, if a fleet did come, anti-space weaponry. Their planet was just one of many supporting the bloody conflict. There was a never-ending stream of wounded arriving from the fronts. The 8 surgeries and 1 failure Irek had before needing rest were like a grain of sand on a beach. She felt small and useless. The cantina venue was a short walk away from their surgery. The hospital complex was constructed from temporary buildings in rings. From orbit, the hexagonal rings would appear like a massive honeycomb on the surface. The outer ring consisted of hospital space, convalescents and residence for hospital personnel. The central part of the ring was designated to natural parks and gardens. At the center were entertainment and food buildings. The arrangement helped blunt the psychological effects of being stuck in a hospital for lengthy periods of time for both patients and staff. Every window had a view of trees, grass, and fountains. The pair showed their hospital credentials at the door before entering the facility. Inside, the cantina was arranged with small two-person tables in a horseshoe shape around a stage against the far wall. Where Irek entered, both left and right, a long bar wrapped around the edge of the building. The room was already bustling with hospital staff on their designated break period. Instead of trying to find a table on the floor, Janelle went along the side and found a pair of seats at the bar with a good view of the stage. The bartender was a member of the Rue, an avian species. He had purple features and a purple beak, which contrasted regally with the tuxedo he wore. He wiped down the already immaculately clean bar with a towel. "What can I get the two ladies this evening?" Irek was having a rough day, and decided she could tie one on tonight and ordered large. "Anything with 3% alcohol in it." The Rue nodded and looked at Janelle. "I suspect you'll be wanting something from our special human stock." "You don't happen to have any also bourbon in stock? I'm feeling homesick," Janelle replied. "As it happens, we do. We have a bottle of Series 1, the Rue replied. "I'll take a double then," Janelle said. After the bartender handed Irek a glass of blue liquor, he went to a special ventilation hood which contained a series of bottles. He placed his hands inside rubber gloves inserted in the side and began mixing a drink before capping it with a metal lid. The bartender extracted the glass and gave it to Janelle. It wasn't that the fumes of human alcohol was toxic to the other species. It was a safety measure to ensure no one accidentally drank one. The glass Janelle had before her on the bar top had enough alcohol in it to give 40 non-human species a strong buzz. Irek suddenly felt like she didn't want to be in the cantina anymore. Her mind went back to the soldier on the table, and here she was drinking herself stupid with 3% blue sapphire and waiting to watch her favourite idol group sing. "I don't think this is a good idea." Irek stood to leave when Janelle spoke. "Stick it out. Trust me. It'll help." "If you say so," Irek replied and sat back down. What did the Death Order know? They could shrug off powerful Force slugs, and she even heard about the one Special Forces human that needed dozens of Jakor soldiers to kill. Soon, the lights dimmed and the first act came on stage. Irek recognized him as a famous Sanapian comedian. She loved the videos she saw of his jokes, and he did amazing work integrating his head crest into his act. Except, tonight, everything he did fell flat to her. The response in the room was muted. Even when he told his most famous joke about a Sanapian trying on a human bodysuit, it only generated a few mild chuckles. The poor man was even beginning to look uncomfortable on stage. After the act ended, crews began clearing the stage to make room for the Stardust Boys. Irek felt like she should be excited. She was a mere 20 meters away from where Miz would stand and sing, yet she felt empty. When the Stardust Boys came out on stage, there was more response from the audience. It was still muted compared to the normal reaction from their concerts. Irek looked at Miz, giving a bow when she felt nothing. Her favourite idol was right there, and she couldn't muster a small clap, let alone a scream of joy. The show was perfection. All 5 boys moved in flawless choreography, and their singing was the best Irek had heard from them. The lights, the pounding bass, and the upbeat tunes reverberated in the room. Yet still, Irek felt nothing. Her mind continued to stray back on the poor soldier laying dead on the operating table. After the set ended, Irek stood as the room gave a small clap and a few whistles rang out from the crowd. She turned to Janelle. "This isn't working. Thanks for trying. I think I'll head back to my room and rest." Irek prepared to join the people exiting the venue when Janelle's hand caught her arm. "This isn't what I wanted you to hear. There's still one more act." Irek was confused. She thought the Stardust Boys was the show. Pulling out the flyer she had shoved in her pocket earlier, she looked over the names on the paper. There, below the Stardust Boys, was one more group. The Mama Elisha Band. "Who is that?" Irek asked. "They're from my home state of Mississippi. Now hush, they'll start soon." Janelle lifted her glass, pushed open the sip hole and took a drink. Her eyes were glued on the stage. The room had mostly cleared out. Only a dozen or so patrons remained in the quiet bar. The stage had a single drum set and a microphone on a stand up front. The lights in the room went out, leaving only a dim beam illuminating the stage. In the silence, 4 humans walked out, 3 men and 1 woman. Each of them had the same dark skin and black hair as Janelle. One man carried a brass instrument, while another carried a wooden stringed instrument, as tall as he was. The third man sat behind the drums, while the woman, wearing a red sequined dress which sparkled in the light, stood before the mic. There was no fanfare and no introduction. The human with the brass instrument pressed one end against his lips. The one on the drums began a slow beat with a snare, and the man with the brass blew. A low melody made from long tones pealed in the air, and the man with the tall stringed instrument began to pluck. The stringed instrument's deep thrum filled the air and added to the mournful memory. Then, the woman began to sing. The song's tempo was slow and the woman's voice pitched low. In lyrics made of long-held notes, she sung of hardship, loss, and pain. An intricate mix of poetry and tune reverberated in Irek's body as she sat in the darkness. The mostly empty room added to the mournful sensation seeping into her bones. Tears began to flow as the woman sang of losing a child to disease. Her story mixed the horrors of poverty and death while ripping at Irek's very soul. Numbness was replaced by sorrow as she fell into the tune sung by the sparkling woman in red on the stage. Then it was over. The song didn't end with a big finale or a flash. The volume slowly lowered and faded away, much like the lives of those in the song. Silence returned to the dark room. No claps were heard, nor the chatter of people. The 4 on stage gave a small bow, and, just as silently as they entered, they left. They were ghosts who arrived and told a mournful tale, only to fade away once more in the night. Irek's tears kept flowing. She turned to reach for a bar napkin to dry her eyes, and to her surprise she saw Janelle. The human's eyes were also tearing, as she silently stared out at the stage. Here, the powerful, terrifying Death Warder was weeping to a song the same as Irek. "I don't understand. Why did you want me to hear such a sad song when we're surrounded by all this death?" Irek whispered. Instead of answering directly, Janelle said something different. "The people of the Confederation have a number of misconceptions about us. Humanity, through a unique set of conditions and random chance, look to you to be monsters. We're strong, durable, and seem unflappable in stress." Janelle paused and picked up a napkin of her own to dab away the tears. "Where we are from, we are weak, fragile, and, until recently, have been constantly reminded of it. A meager 2 centuries ago, even our wealthiest elites would lose children to common disease. War, sickness, and hatred ran rampant." "Why would you want to make depressing music then? Why not happy music?" Irek asked, not understanding the reasoning behind the song she just heard. Why would anyone want to listen to something so sad? "We learned something important. When dealing with hardship, it's important to confront it. We developed tragic plays, black humor, and from where I'm from, we created the blues. We learned if we attempted to distract ourselves from the horrors of our world with happy tunes, we only made things worse. Toxic positivity," Janelle explained. "These songs aren't meant to remind us things are bad. They're meant to help us overcome it by making us confront reality." "I still don't understand," Irek said. "Tell me." Janelle motioned with her drink. "How are you feeling now?" Irek stopped and thought. Her sadness and pain were still present, but it was no longer unbearable. It was as if the tears the song induced drained away the depression and hopelessness she felt earlier in the evening. "I feel like I can go on tomorrow." Janelle gave a small smile, her white teeth brilliant against her dark skin. "It's a start. We will never feel truly happy in times like these. It's a constant struggle and challenge. What we can do is confront it and not back down. We still have more lives to save tomorrow. We can then take solace this will not go on forever." Irek was beginning to understand. The humans were from a death world. She'd only thought of them as terrifying giants among the stars. She never stopped to consider what they had to go through living on one. She looked over Janelle and saw no signs of natural claws, an armored skeleton, or large fangs. They had to contend with a hostile environment without imposing speed or thick skin. And not only did they survive in such a hostile environment, they thrived. The humans weren't monsters. They lived among them and came out strong. They had wisdom in how they approached loss and pain. Irek resolved herself. The humans would, too, be broken if they refused to confront the pain of life. Irek would do the same. She had patients' lives counting on it.